So here's a bit of an interesting little oddity. Busy Police for the Atari 2600 video computer system. This was one of several counterfeit Atari video games sold exclusively in Canada in the early 1980s by local discount store Zellers, back when that branch was still around, that is. Now, keen observers and longtime Atari players will no doubt look at the on-screen footage on display here and assume that Busy Police looks a lot like Activision classic Keystone Capers. And they'd be correct. A lot of these Zellers exclusive Atari games were merely repackaged versions of pre-existing Atari titles and given funny new names along with funny cheapo stock artwork ripped from other places, usually artwork that had little to do with the contents of the cartridge itself. I suppose that's why Atari eventually told them to piss off and stop selling these things. Oh, by the way, there was another game that Zellers sold that I hadn't seen sold anywhere else outside of the dollar store. The god-awful Canada Hunt for the original Wii. No wonder they went out of business. Anyway, the main goal of Keystone Busy Police is to apprehend the criminal who has stolen some goods and is making a run for it. You'll have to catch the criminal before he escapes, which usually occurs when the little timer on top reaches 0, or he just clears the escapes. Now, in addition to trying to catch the bad guy, you also have to avoid oncoming obstacles, whether they be bouncing balls or flying planes or whatnots. Collision with some of these obstacles will cost you a life, but some obstacle collisions will usually deduct seconds from your timer, thereby reducing your chances of catching the wayward thief. Busy Police is straight up Keystone Capers with a new coat of paint, which means you're getting a top-notch Atari video game with a rather simple premise, but otherwise impeccable gameplay. While the overall level design never changes, the game adds to the challenge by inserting more obstacles for you to evade in later rounds and increasing their speed so they make it harder to dodge. Your Busy Police can run, jump, and duck rather well with rather responsive controls. Using the elevators is a bit of a trick, but once you get the hang of it and how it operates, it could be a big help or a big detriment. Now, in terms of control, it's fairly simple and fairly functional. You can run, jump, and duck, and all of these abilities are very easy to pull off. That in itself probably goes without saying, and a game's ability to efficiently execute the most basic of character functions is probably not something to give high praise for in Busy Police, but I have seen games on later consoles screw up these very basic concepts with either poor control or ill-conceived execution, especially when these games rely on precision control to be played competently, let alone effectively. So to say that Busy Police manages good overall control is worth mentioning, since precision jumping and ducking are necessary abilities to survive in Busy Police, and thankfully they work out great here. Busy Police sports some pretty decent looking graphics. While the backdrops are rather plain looking with its solid colors, the various items such as carts and escalators are fairly distinguishable, and I like the gradient effect on the cityscape. That's a particularly nice touch, but the character sprites of Keystone Kelly and Harry Hooligan Busy Police and, we'll call him Loitering Crook, there you go, are the true highlights of this game, looking fairly decent and animating rather smoothly. There's an almost advanced quality to the work done on these characters that, if smoothed out a bit, could have fit in with something off an NES launch title. Bit of a stretch perhaps, but they generally look impressive given the hardware. In terms of sound, Busy Police is pretty minimal in that regard. You have footsteps that sound decent, a jumping sound effect, a collision effect, and a couple others. They sound pretty decent, not much more to say in that regard. It's not the most memorable collection of sound effects to come out of the video computer system, but they serve their purpose and they're not annoying. As far as I'm concerned, that's just fine. Whether you call it Busy Police or Keystone Capers, this is a straight up enjoyable and well crafted Atari game that's easy to get into, looks good, and plays great. This Zellers branded variant is no different from the Activision original, so if you already have a copy of Keystone Capers in your Atari collection, there's virtually no reason to pick this one up unless it's purely for collector's purposes. Something to add to that list of oddities scattered throughout the gaming fringe. And the game does have a bit of a price tag to it, so you might as well probably better off picking up Keystone Capers instead. It's the same game anyways.